San Gabriel Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Georgetown, Texas welcomes you to this Sunday service. We are a congregation that welcomes all, promotes personal and spiritual growth, and works for a just, peaceful, and sustainable world. Our themes for the month of October are cultivating relationships and celebrating LGBTQ History Month and its achievements. I am Elena Parkhurst, and I've been a member of SGUUF for 8 years. I became involved through Georgetown's PFLAG meeting, which came to be as a result of efforts by Reverend Mark Scrobitz and SGUUF. I attended that first PFLAG meeting as the staff advisor for Georgetown High School's Gay-Straight Alliance. I came out as a lesbian woman in 1991. I witnessed our government, churches, and medical community let LGBTQ and Black people die from HIV/AIDS, offering no support or empathy because they did not see us as human. What attracted me to the UU faith is the recognition of everyone's full humanity and our interconnectedness. For me, the UU traditions have all the good parts of my childhood church without the bad parts that made me feel like I was lesser because of who I love. This week, we are honored to have Reverend Erin Walter as a guest speaker. Reverend Erin J. Walter is a minister, an activist, a musician in Austin, and winner of the 2017 Sermon Award for the UU Women's Federation. A former YMCA director, Reverend Walter is a singer and songwriter for the band Parker Woodland. She serves on the board of the Texas UU Justice Ministry and is an affiliated community minister at Wildflower UU in Austin. Today's music is provided by Reverend Walter, and you can hear more of her music on her website, erinjwalter.com. In keeping with our tradition of starting our service, let us now light the chalice using the words of Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, a Black LGBTQ Buddhist. We can't marginalize others or ourselves as part of our pursuit of liberation, personal or political. We couldn't have arrived here without a fuller and fuller fullness. Love and justice are not two. Without interchange, there can be no outer change. Without collective change, no change matters. Let this light shine on our humanity, the humanity of others, and reveal our interdependence. Let this light kindle love and justice together.
Good morning. I am Reverend Erin Walter, and it is a great joy and a privilege to be with you today, even through technology and across the miles. I'm so glad you're here. Our opening words this morning come from Reverend Mark L. Bellatini, an excerpt of his piece, For Religion to be Significant. For religion to be significant, it has to provide more than the comforts of community. It also has to provide opportunities for deepening, for what I call spiritual growth, and for the casting down of false images and stereotypes, which hurt us all. A good religion has to open us to the real diversity of our modern world. Welcome.
Our affirmation reminds us of who we are together in fellowship and our sacred covenant to each other. Please join as we say our affirmation. The doctrine of this church is love. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to be with you today, and I'm coming to you from a different location. I have a different picture behind me, and I've got a different wonder box. Have you brought your wondering minds with you today? I hope so. We lift up in Unitarian Universalism how we help each other learn and grow through our curiosity and our questions. So, not a lot of clues. Make some noise. Make a guess what you think might be in here. Tell someone near you. Well, let's open it up. A piece of paper. Let's fold it up. A rectangle or a square. We did some paper folding in RE time a few weeks ago. We made incredible paper planes. A piece of paper can be many different things. Square shapes can be changed into other things, and I've got a story about that. It's called
Perfect Square by Michael Hall, shared with permission from HarperCollins Children's Books. It was a perfect square. It had 4 matching corners and 4 equal sides. But on Monday, the square was cut into pieces and poked full of holes. It wasn't perfectly square anymore. So it turned itself into a fountain that babbled and giggled and clapped. On Tuesday, the square was torn into scraps. So it made itself into a garden. On Wednesday, the square was shredded in strips. So it made itself into a park. On Thursday, the square was shattered. So it made itself into a bridge. On Friday, the square was snipped into ribbons. So it made itself into a river. On Saturday, the square was crumpled and ripped and wrinkled. So it made itself into a mountain. On Sunday, the square waited to see what was next. It waited and waited. Nothing happened. The 4 equal sides were confining. Its four matching corners were rigid and cramped. So it made itself into a window that looked out on a mountain, that gave birth to a river, that was crossed by a bridge that led to a park, that was home to a garden that had at its center a fountain, that babbled and giggled and clapped. The end.
I'm so proud of that perfect square who took on all those changes and actually was eager for more and was transformed by the changes it went through. I know Reverend Erin is going to talk to us about how we can embrace change and even in difficult times, discover how we can learn and grow. I'm proud of our congregation for supporting one another through difficult times and caring for one another, as sometimes difficult times are just that, and also working hard for justice so that we can stop some of these difficult things that we shouldn't be dealing with. But we'll talk more about these different, how we can grow and transform during difficult times in RE today. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know
we interrupt this Sunday service for a public service announcement. Some of us have changed during COVID. A lot. Many people change a lot even in a seemingly ordinary 18, 19, however many months. Some of us are looking to, quote, return to normal, while others are longing for a fresh start altogether or something in between. We may be tired of craning our necks looking back at what was. How about you? How are you feeling about change, growth, transition during this time? If you use chat, I invite you to share. As we engage with people now, perhaps let's treat even the ones we think we know with curiosity and wonder, rather than assumptions of who or how they are. Similarly, it's always good to remember this, that there are many ways to use social media. I bring this up in this public service announcement because we spend a lot of time on social media these days, and some of us consider how we show up there to be something of a spiritual practice. Off the top of my head, I can think of people who primarily use Facebook, for example, for family photo albums, professional purposes only, gifts, memes, asking open-ended, thoughtful questions for discussion, making wisecracks, and more, all somehow meshed together in one place. My favorite summary of Facebook is when a friend told me the other day that someone said to her, "You're so busy, you're doing great," based on what they'd seen on Facebook. And my friend thought, doesn't this person know Facebook is just a highlight reel? Now, you can substitute whatever other avenue for Facebook if you want. This is just an example, but I've heard it from many of you. Even if we try, and I try, to give a balance of life's highs and lows, the hilarity and the mundane on social media, it's still a highlighted reel, still curated. You don't need me to tell you every time I take a nap, but hint, it's often. So no matter how much you may have seen of someone online, no matter how much I may have seen someone online since the pandemic or any time, I like to remind myself it's not the full picture. That's been on my heart and mind a lot lately. I want to be open to what is new and magical and different in my life. And I want to be open to witness that in your life too. With love, your community minister friend on the internet. So I wrote that public service announcement for my community, a lot of which I do cultivate on Facebook. Even before the pandemic, it was a place where I felt my people gathered. And so it was important to have messages there that speak to ministry and not just memes for me, although I love a meme. I asked folks to consider these questions, and I ask you to consider and share about them too. What would you like people to know about you now? What has changed for you? And what is your vision for your next chapter? Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote 7, and in some cases now 8 principles. We're considering congregation by congregation and as a denomination an 8th principle of anti-racism and multicultural community. But growing up UU, I learned those 7 principles first, and what we know about them is that they are moral guides and values, but not considered dogma, because this is a living tradition. And our living tradition draws source material from many places, diverse like science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. I love that, the diversity of our Unitarian Universalist sources. And today I'm talking about the 3rd principle, which calls us to acceptance of one another and encouragement of spiritual growth in our congregations. So acceptance and growth in ourselves, in each other, in our congregations. That's a lot. We're going to get into it in a minute. But I want you to know that Reverend Barbara Wells Ten Hove explains that our principles, again, are not dogma or doctrine, but rather a guide for those of us who choose to join and participate in Unitarian Universalist religious communities. Choose to join, and not just join, but participate. That's big stuff. Okay, so this third principle, I will tell you, I was really grounded in what we used to call, or sometimes do still call, the pillars of our faith. The first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And the seventh principle, respect for that interdependent web of life, that we are all connected. And I love those two principles still. But I've really fallen in love with this third principle lately. This acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Now, Reverend Meg Barnhouse, who is the senior minister of First UU Austin, where I grew up, and who was a wonderful colleague, Reverend Meg wrote in the UU World magazine in 2009 a piece entitled, "Who Says Unitarian Universalism's Principles Are Easy?" And I love it. She says, for anybody who thinks they're easy, she has a suggestion. She says, let's stick something on the end of every principle that will stop people from smiling and nodding comfortably. Something instead of that old game where people would add "in the bathtub" or "between the sheets" to their fortune cookie or whatever phrase. How about attaching "beginning in our homes" and congregations to the end of every principle? Now, the third principle already has "in our congregations" at the end of that spiritual growth. But I've thought a lot about that "in our homes" piece, because especially when my children were young, they're now in 4th and 7th grade. But when they were really little and everything was so full of effort, I used to think, if I could muster just a notable fraction of the compassion I feel for the world, for the people in my house, I would be a much better mother. And so the same is true of community. It's a lot harder to practice these principles in community and with each other than to kind of imagine it for strangers in the world or the world as a whole. So Reverend Meg Barnhouse says, everyone who has raised children knows that peace is often at odds with liberty and that justice demands a disturbance of the peace. She says to put those three together in one principle is outrageous and lovely. And she's referring to the second principle there. But I love that phrase that she uses, outrageous and lovely. And that's also kind of how I feel about the third principle. We say acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in the same principle. So we're accepting ourselves, each other, our congregations, the world as best we can, the way they are. And we're not going to stop there. We are still going to encourage growth, spiritual growth, personal growth, congregational growth. And that's all in one, in the third principle. How outrageous and lovely. And it reminds me of my dear friend and colleague, Reverend Teresa Ninan Soto's saying, they would say, I love you so much, and you have some work to do. That's the third principle. I love you so much, and you have some work to do. Can you feel that about yourself, about your church community, about the world? Can you say, I love myself so much, and I have some work to do? I love this congregation so much, and we have some work to do. I love the world so much, and we have some work to do. It's that loving, that acceptance that gives us a grounding to do the work of growth, of justice, of spirit, of change. And we especially have that call right now in this time of transition, of unknowns, where we can try to accept life and the world as it is right now, not turn away from it, and envision the next chapter of what we want together. So when I am chewing on something like this outrageous and lovely situation of acceptance and growth, as a community minister, I like to reach out to my people. Unitarian Universalism is shared ministry. And so as a community minister, I asked my community, and I did what I often do, which is I asked my people on Facebook, the same place where I made that public service announcement. I asked them for their experiences. When have they felt accepted and encouraged to grow and change? When have they felt the third principle fostered in their life? And I got some really wonderful responses, and I want to share a few of them with you. And I invite you to think about, when have you been accepted? And what did that mean? How did that feel? And when have you also grown? And did maybe those two relate in some way? Did you ever feel accepted? And did that liberate you to grow? So, Eleanor, a friend of mine who I worked with at the YMCA and whose job was eliminated, as was mine, due to the pandemic. So we both went through some tough stuff in 2020 and had to really grapple with how to accept it, how to grow from it. Eleanor shared this. She said, "My biggest growth spurts always seem to come via incredibly difficult situations. In fact, I think you could classify them as devastating, which has in turn given me a kind of appreciation for world-shattering events in my life." She says, "I appreciate the lessons I've learned from them, the opportunities for change and growth, though that doesn't change the fact that they were devastating." After saying that, she writes, "I feel like I need to also acknowledge that I've led a privileged life. So number one, I could have experienced a lot worse. And number two, I can't take all the credit for coming out of these situations intact or stronger." Thank you, Eleanor, for sharing your perspective. A couple of things come to mind for that. And I think we often say things like, it could have been worse. I could have had it harder. And it's important to remember that it's not an oppression Olympics or a devastation Olympics out there. We're all dealing with the human experience, and we all have challenges in our own way. But I know what she means. I know what she means when she says that she's had privileges and support that have helped her get through it. And so that's also important to remember. If we've gotten through something and changed and grown, that doesn't automatically mean that someone else is going to thrive under the same circumstances. There are a lot of factors that go into how we come through something. And so maybe to reserve our judgment, to keep that curiosity that I mentioned at the beginning for each other and how each of us is coming through this time, which has been really devastating for some and less so for others, sometimes due to circumstances. But I appreciate Eleanor saying that she has grown through hard things. That's true often for many of us. And on the other side of that coin, but the same coin, something different, a different perspective from my friend Jacqueline. But I think both can be true. Some of you have heard me perform my song with my band, Parker Woodland. That's kind of my anthem, my theme song, and it's "The World's on Fire and We Still Fall in Love." And so I really believe in holding these two things that seemingly in conflict, but can both be true. The world's on fire, things can be very hard, and there's love, there's beauty, there's joy. And so Jacqueline gives us kind of the other side of this perspective. Jacqueline says, "I've grown." She's grown by experiencing more good things, more love, gaining new meaningful relationships, romantic or platonic, and finding new ways of seeking joy. She says, adding suffering and struggle to pre-existing, long-standing suffering, my depression, has not been a recipe for growth. She says she's been able to accept herself better and be kinder to herself after being strongly validated by friends whose opinions, wisdom, and perspectives she really values. Jacqueline says, having someone else in my life who has been through a similar struggle and can tell me, you have been really sick, you have legitimate mental illness, you have for a long time, you're not making it up. It is bad, it is hard. You don't deserve it, and you do deserve help. She says, that has been so powerful. It's true. And I believe that One of the messages Unitarian Universalism has to offer the world, a saving message that many people still need to hear, is that you do not have to suffer to be loved. That's what universalism means. We are all loved. We are all saved in that original message of Universalist Christianity, but you are all loved now. I am, for who we are now. Acceptance, the third principle, and room to grow. And I thank Jacqueline for her input. I wonder what's resonating for you, what other perspectives you might also bring, and I hope you'll share them in your congregation. We need to talk about what it takes to accept ourselves and to grow. It's not easy work. Reverend Meg Barnhouse was right. These are not easy principles at all. So the third and final perspective I want to share with you is from my friend Changin, an activist that I met through the Texas Civil Rights Project, and who shares their story. And I want to say that they're giving their particular perspectives from their religious and cultural upbringing, and they share them, and I share them, not to generalize that all people from their cultural or religious background have had that same experience, but to be true to the experience that Changin shares, remembering from Reverend Bellatini that there is a true diversity in this world. And so we share our stories remembering that no one is a monolith, no group. All right, but this story really spoke to my heart, and I'm grateful he shared it. He says, when I was in college and started my transition was when I finally found the transgender community. I really grew into the person that I am during that time, because it was during that transition when I was finally comfortable as myself and how I presented. I grew from someone who couldn't speak in front of others, hid from any kind of spotlight, avoided any sort of situations where there are strangers, to the person I am now, confident in myself. I didn't have acceptance from my blood family, but the support I received from my friends that turned into family solidified for me that love is what makes a family. Through my transition process, I've learned to be more open-minded, especially since I came from a closed-minded upbringing and just now accepting of everyone. Now I want to pause. Changin has more to share, but I want to pause and just celebrate and point out what he says here, which is that when he felt accepted, he was able to be more accepting of others. That is so powerful. We all have room to grow. Those of us who are yearning for and longing for acceptance, we ourselves also have places to grow and become more accepting. And so I appreciate Changin for naming that from his experience. He said, my parents are Christians, and that affected their ability to accept me greatly. And on top of being Asian, from a closed-minded perspective to begin with. And again, we know that's not the case for all in those groups, but that did inform in his case. He says, I was kicked out when I first came out as a lesbian right after high school. I didn't know about the trans community yet. I was sheltered. There was constant emotional and mental abuse before then because they suspected that I was anything but a cis female. After I left the house, I was pretty much against religion. I didn't believe in anything but actual people. I think a lot of us, some of us at least, can relate to that. He said he still doesn't have a relationship with his parents. He says he told them about his struggles with suicide and depression before becoming more himself. They basically told me, he said, they wished I had died because I bring shame to them and I make them look like bad parents to the people of their church. He says, I've met great people that are religious and that gives me hope, but most of my experience has been negative. I just want to take a breath with you now. That's a hard story, I feel like, for me to read because I love him as a friend and an activist in our community. And it's hard, and I know that some of you may have experienced something like that. And for me, as someone for whom religion is really important, it's painful to know all of the harm that's been caused. I'm grateful that many denominations continue to grow in their acceptance And what I want to make sure is that we as UUs are continuing to put the word out that we exist and that we are here to be accepting. That is universalism, and that we are trying to grow too. We know we are not perfect. We know we are not all the way there. We are working on it too. I have been spending a lot of time in the country. I've been yearning for nature lately, and there has been a church on my drive that has a sign, and I want to be honest, I don't know what they thought when they put it out there. Maybe this isn't what they thought, but what it says is, if you don't like the way you're born, try being born again. And maybe there are a lot of ways to read that, but when I read it, I feel like they might be trying to send a message to my friends and family who are trans. And so knowing those signs are out there still, we as Unitarian Universalists need to put our signs out there that say that you are accepted and there is a place for you to grow, whoever you may be, whatever the diversity of your experience. And we as congregations need to continue to do our work, internal, personal work, and congregational work, so that all folks who come through our doors feel that love, feel that acceptance. I invite you to think of the words of Reverend Teresa Soto again with me one more time. I love you so much, and you have some work to do. May we accept those words and the invitation to grow as well.
Hello, UU family. I'm going to sing a song with you called Shine on Me. It's an amazing spiritual that anybody can sing. And in these days when the things that we're dealing with, the feeling separate and all of that, and things seem so hard, this is one of those songs that you just throw your head back, put it in your medicine kit. All you have to do is ask. And here's how it goes. Shine on me, oh shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me. Lift me up, oh, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, lift me up, yes, lift me up. Let the light from the lighthouse lift me up, oh, hold me close, yes, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse hold me close, yes, hold me close, oh, hold me close. Let the light from the lighthouse, please, hold me close. Oh, shine on me, yes, shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me, oh, shine shine on me. Let the light from the lighthouse shine on me.
Let us extinguish this chalice with the thoughts of Angel Kyoto Williams. Let us see past the sameness and likeness as the lens through which we view our potential to love one another. Let our intersectionality allow us to weave a web of love, justice, and connectedness without sacrificing our individuality or marginalizing anyone. Let us be moved to do what is loving and just, not because I am doing something for you, but it is actually about me, which is tied to you, because there is, in an absolute sense, no separation.
Thank you so much for the gift of being in community with you today, for the chance to feel about, be about the third principle of our faith, this acceptance and growth, which is not easy work. I invite you to take a breath with me before our benediction. And then, if you are willing, always and only by consent, friends, but if you are willing to put your hands out as though our hands might be touching on some other plane, and envision whose hand you might hold next time we are together again. I invite you into this moment of gratitude. Spirit of life and love, of so many names across all languages, knowing no human borders, thank you for this day. Thank you for the chance again to accept myself, ourselves, each other, and thank you for the chance again to grow, to look inward and outward, to do the work of community that is deepening, that goes beyond comfort, that yes, includes comfort and so much more. May we love each other fully, celebrating opportunities to change where we need to change, and just wrapping ourselves in love and acceptance where we can do that too. If you are sick, may you be on the path to healing. If you are lonely, may you be on the path to reunion. If you are just grateful to have made it here today, I am grateful you've made it here too. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Until we meet again.